Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to teen Vogue and representation. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying AQA A-level media studies, as teen Vogue currently appears on that specification. It's important to note that I will be speaking about a number of examples that I saw when I visited the Teen Vogue website. You will be visiting the Teen Vogue website on other days, and therefore you're going to see some of your own examples. You might not necessarily see the ones that I'm mentioning. As long as you have your own examples to back up your points, that's what's important. So we're going to start off having a think about the representation of young people. This magazine, don't forget, is Teen Vogue, so it's clearly aimed at a young audience. It's important, therefore, to have a look at how young people are represented in general. The website shows quite stereotypical interests for teenagers. So there's lots of focus on popular culture, things like TV, film, music, celebrities, etc. However, there are also a number of unconventional ideas about age. For example, there's quite a large focus on politics. Young people are often associated with not being interested in politics. And so this magazine website really challenges those ideas by really pushing forward ideas and issues that teenagers might be interested in that are related to political issues. For example, there's lots of articles about things like climate change and Greta Thunberg, showing other young people in positions of power, young people who've done something to really kind of try and change the world. So showing lots of prominent representations of young people doing something good in the community. Another example is a focus on things like Simone Biles, world famous Olympic gymnast, showing her winning medals, talking about her achievements and her success. So really showing young people as being achievers, being successful, having the potential to be incredibly powerful people. By contrast, older people are often shown in the pages of Teen Vogue on their website in a much more negative light. So there's lots of stories about adults not doing enough, or failing to listen to young people, or needing to be better. And that really kind of is representative of the fact that this online magazine is aimed at young people and therefore is very much more likely to be more positive about young people and less positive about adults. We're now going to have a look at the representation of women in Teen Vogue. So the stereotypical representations of women, especially in magazines, are often associated with things like beauty and makeup, clothing, weight, for example. And actually, when you look at the Teen Vogue magazine, there's very little representations of things like this on their website. There's no real emphasis on finding a boyfriend or a husband. There's nothing about finding a partner. There's nothing about love or marriage or needing somebody to be in a relationship with. And that's what a lot of other magazines aimed at this age group often tend to focus on. So that makes this quite unusual. It represents women as being quite independent and not needing to settle down with anybody. The representations of people like Greta Thunberg and Simone Biles are showing young women in very powerful, very successful positions. Simone Biles has won multiple Olympic gold medals. And so showing young women as very dominant within whatever field it is they are in. The magazine itself does tackle a lot of issues that are relevant to women, and it doesn't ignore things like misogyny and oppression. It actually tackles them head on. So there are articles within the website that talk about women's rights, the need for feminism, and things like sexual harassment, sexual assault. So there's tackling those issues, not glamorizing them, but actually kind of encouraging young people to talk about these issues and encouraging women to see them as issues that do need to be talked about, and offering support for people who've been affected by those issues. So bell hooks might see the representations within this magazine as really kind of fighting against patriarchal oppression and encouraging particularly a female audience to recognise misogyny and the patriarchy and to kind of fight back against those issues. In fact, it's quite telling that in 2021, when bell hooks passed away, Teen Vogue actually had several articles about her and the impact that she had both on women, society, and on their particular website as well. It's interesting to think about David Gauntlet's theory here when he talks about his kind of pick and mix identities and how diverse our representations have come to be over the last few years. This magazine is not just showing that there is one way to be a woman. You know, a lot of magazines, in particular women's magazines, will often focus on a particular look being the one to go for, whereas this magazine shows a really diverse, broader range of representations. There's women with different styles of hair, there's women with different gender identities, there's women behaving in different ways, in more traditionally feminine ways and in less traditionally feminine ways. There's different styles going on within the magazine as well. So quite a diverse representation of gender as well. The representation of men in this magazine is quite interesting because I suppose Teen Vogue is predominantly aimed at a young female audience. The representations of men are reasonably negative. So there's a lot of representations of men as being oppressors, as being part of the patriarchy. There's discussions of them being people who might commit sexual assault. There's articles that mention men as being ignorant. There's talk about failed politicians. So there's this kind of generally negative representation of masculinity, and a particularly of toxic masculinity. Obviously not all men, but it's that idea that it's suggesting that there's a real problem with our addressing of toxic masculinity within the world at the moment. However, there are some younger male representations that are a bit more positive. So definitely suggesting that the target audience for this online magazine is reasonably young. There were some phrases that I noted down when I had a look at this website. So for example, instead of talking to, and just saying, if you're a woman, this applies to you, they actually use the phrase, if you have a vagina. So perhaps using language like if you have a vagina is a great way of kind of including trans lives in the discussions and in the articles, and not making it feel like this is, aimed at solely kind of cis teenagers. There were also some articles about being intersex as well, educational articles explaining what that means, and then discussing issues that might relate to that. If you have a look at more mainstream, typical, conventional magazines aimed at teenage girls, there's very much a focus on a heteronormative life. So that means normally focusing on straight relationships, so kind of opposite sex relationships. And actually this magazine focuses on a broad range of sexualities instead. There were some articles about LGBTQ oppression and LGBTQ plus rights as well. There were some real positive stories and inclusive stories, talk about LGBTQ plus history, and really trying to perhaps be more inclusive in terms of sexuality. So perhaps a lot more inclusive and diverse representations of sexuality than you might find in other more mainstream magazines, either print or online, aimed at teenagers. A lot of online magazines and print magazines often fail to include really diverse representations of ethnicity, whereas there's a whole range of people from different backgrounds featured on the Teen Vogue website. We see Black women in particular being celebrated, shown as being successful winners and dominating whatever industry they are in. When I looked at the Teen Vogue website, there was a really interesting article about black hair, and black hair, natural black hair, is often underrepresented in magazines. Often it's kind of straightened or styled in a way which is made to seem more kind of Western and more kind of mainstream. And so it's really nice to see more diverse representations of ethnicity actually celebrating natural black hair, which suggests that actually there is a more diverse audience for this magazine and that they are perhaps trying to be more inclusive with their representations. The website actually draws attention to the post-colonial era that we live in and the way that different people from different backgrounds may still be suffering from inequality as a result of this. There was also an article called Joy of the Brown Girl, and this was about celebrating women from particular ethnic groups and their achievements and successes. The article actually talks about how the editor of Teen Vogue deliberately chose to feature this particular actress because of her own heritage and wanting to see people from her own cultural backgrounds in the pages or on the pages of the Teen Vogue website and magazine. So sometimes the representations are influenced by individual producers involved in media texts. So that was my easy to understand guide to teen Vogue and representation. Don't forget to check out my channel for other videos about teen Vogue and indeed other set products for AQA A-level. And if you've got any questions or ideas, then please just leave a little comment below and I will see what I can do.